The story I'm about to tell you still hasn't let go of me. I don't know why I'm even writing this down. Honestly, all I want is an answer. I stopped caring a long time ago whether people think I'm crazy. At this point, someone's going to think that regardless, and I don't have much left to lose by saying it anyway. If there's even one person out there who reads this and recognizes something, one small clue about why any of this happened to me, that could be the thing that saves my life. It's been a year now. A full year of waking up in the middle of the night from nightmares I can't outrun. Sleeping with the bedroom door locked and the lights on. Every night, before I even think about closing my eyes, I lock that door. 2 deadbolts and a chain. And I live alone, so there's nobody on the other side of it but me. I've gotten jumpy. I barely talk to anyone anymore. And every night, once that door is locked, I have a drink. Sometimes 2. Just to make it possible to close my eyes at all. You're probably asking yourself if I'm losing it. Honestly, maybe. I don't know anything for certain anymore. All I know is where it started, a little over a year ago, when I moved into a new place. It began with an apartment. The building was an old 5-story walk-up on the edge of town, one of those low-rise blocks the mill company threw up back in the 60s for its workers, long since sold off unit by unit. Nothing fancy, nothing close to downtown, which is exactly why I could afford it. I had to take out a loan to close the deal, but the day I got the keys, I was genuinely happy. 2 bedrooms, a decent-sized kitchen, enough space for one guy starting over. Used furniture, a little rough around the edges, but mine. I did the renovation myself, room by room, over the better part of 6 months. Replumbed most of it, rewired what needed rewiring. Out of all the old appliances, the only one I actually had to replace was the washing machine. The old one still ran, technically, but the spin cycle made a noise like the whole building was under attack. It banged against the tile so hard it sounded like something out of a war movie happening in my bathroom. Neither the neighbors nor I could live with it, so another loan, another line of credit maxed out, and a shiny new machine took its place. The one thing I kept putting off was the balcony. It wasn't really my mess. It belonged to whoever lived there before me. A mountain of it, and I mean that literally. Old lumber, flattened cardboard boxes stuffed with paperbacks, shoes, tools, and 100 other things filed under "might need this someday" and never touched again. Somebody with more patience than me might have enjoyed picking through it, hunting for some hidden treasure. For me, clearing that balcony was going to be one of the most miserable ways I could think of to spend a Saturday, so I kept finding reasons to skip it. From March, when I moved in, all the way through spring, I successfully avoided the balcony entirely. Then summer hit. The heat made airing the place out non-negotiable, and the balcony door, the one that opened inward from outside, had years of junk packed against it. It wouldn't budge past halfway. So, one Saturday morning, armed with a stack of heavy-duty garbage bags, I went to war. I threw out almost everything I touched. A cassette player missing every button, its case cracked down the middle, useful, sure, into the bag. One rubber boot, no partner anywhere in sight, no earthly reason anyone would have kept just the one. What circumstance could possibly call for a single rubber boot? Into the bag it went too, though some tiny part of me wondered, half joking, if I'd end up regretting it. Like maybe, at the end of all this, I'd be thanking God I kept that one lonely boot. A whole box of old flyers and free classifieds, good for nothing except reading what people were selling 10 years ago. Followed the boot into the bag. Hour after hour, bag after bag, I cleared that balcony down to bare concrete. Barely 60 square feet of space, and it cost me 7 full garbage bags and most of a day. I found exactly 4 things worth keeping: a decent summer fishing rod, a bike pump, a couple of odds and ends, which honestly surprised me given the ratio of junk to anything usable. Once the last bag hit the dumpster, I went back up to finish the one thing that had actually been bothering me the whole time I'd been avoiding this job. An old rug, scorched and moth-eaten in a few spots, hanging over the wall that separated my balcony from the neighbor's. Behind it was a door. Not a gate, not a grate. An actual wooden door, set into the dividing wall, leading straight onto the next balcony over. I knew, vaguely, that these old company blocks had connecting fire escape doors between end-unit balconies, a leftover fire code requirement from back when they went up, so people could move unit to unit in an emergency instead of getting stuck. I'd just never actually seen one, and definitely never heard of it being an interior door like this, hidden behind a rug like somebody wanted it forgotten. That evening I went outside and looked up at the building from the street, and sure enough, every balcony on that side had one. I felt a little silly. There was nothing mysterious about it at all. It was just an old design nobody used anymore. Mostly because once the Soviet-style planning gave way to people actually wanting privacy, everybody just walled theirs off or left them hidden the way mine had been. Corner units, like mine, only got 1. Balconies in the middle of the row got 2. Made sense. I relaxed. I knocked on the door anyway, curious whether anyone actually lived on the other side. Nothing. I tried the handle, locked from their end. Fair enough, I thought. Not my business. I went back to my plan. Talk to the neighbor, get their blessing, take the door out, and brick the opening shut properly. Expensive, sure, but leaving a functioning door straight into a stranger's apartment wasn't an option I could live with. Except nobody answered. Not that day, not the next, not a week later. I started to get the creeping feeling that unit might be empty. Turned out I was right. I got it confirmed by an elderly woman 2 floors down, Grandma Ann, everybody in the building called her, who invited me in for tea and a plate of her homemade pierogies when she caught me lurking in the stairwell. She told me nobody had lived in that unit for close to 5 years. Before that, she said, it had been a young couple, together a decade before they finally managed to have a baby. And then, about a month after the baby was born, it just vanished, right out of its crib. No trace, no explanation. Police investigated for weeks and came up with nothing. Within a month, the couple had packed up and moved out to a farm property somewhere up past Cochrane, and the unit had sat empty ever since. That, at least, worked in my favor. No neighbor to negotiate with meant nothing standing between me and just doing the job myself. So the next free Saturday, 10 in the morning, most of the building already up and moving, except, of course, for the poor souls who'd celebrated the end of the work week a little too hard and now had to trade sleeping in for listening to their neighbor swing a sledgehammer. Sorry about that. It had to be done. Pull the old door, clear the frame, wait for a delivery of cinder block and mortar mix, haul it all up to my floor, and get the opening bricked shut, clean and level before the day was out. The door itself came out faster than I expected. 2 solid hits and the whole thing gave way. More dust and rot than actual wood. What was left of it went into my favorite bottomless black garbage bag along with the rest of the debris. By the time the building supplies showed up, I had maybe 90 minutes to spare, so I used it to step through the empty frame onto the neighbor's balcony for the first time. There wasn't much to see. A thin layer of dust and grit over everything, thick enough that every step I took left a clean footprint behind me. The sliding door into the unit itself was filthy, So filthy that even with my face right up against the glass, I couldn't make out a thing inside. I gave the interior door handle a tug, gently at first, then harder. Locked from the inside. Fine. I hadn't really wanted to see more anyway. That's a good way to get a trespassing charge, or worse, a call from the local RCMP detachment. I went back to my own balcony and waited for the delivery. By evening, the wall was up. Solid cinder block, mortared in clean, level rows. I stood there, admiring my own handiwork, genuinely pleased with myself, and figured all that was left to do was let the mortar cure and never think about that door again. That was the night everything I'm about to tell you actually started. I woke up sometime after midnight, needing the bathroom, and on my way there I heard something. A sound I can't fully describe. Wet, wrong, unpleasant in a way that made the hair go up on my arms before my brain even caught up. The closer I got to my own bed on the way back, the louder it seemed. Like someone snoring with a mouthful of water. Some kind of thick, syrupy snorting and gurgling. On and off, on and off. It seemed to be coming from behind the wall, from the empty unit next door. I told myself it was nothing, probably Grandma Ann downstairs snoring loud enough to carry through old plaster. People snore strangely all the time. I went back to bed and didn't think about it again. Until the next morning, when I went out to admire my finished wall and found a genuinely unpleasant surprise waiting for me. Near the top, the cinder block had partially collapsed, and there wasn't a single block lying on my balcony floor. Not one. It looked, if anything, like someone had dismantled it from the other side. From inside a unit that had supposedly been locked and empty for 5 years. I didn't let my mind go anywhere strange with that one. The obvious explanation was that I'd mixed the mortar wrong or stacked the blocks badly, or both, I'm no mason, and it wouldn't have been the first project I botched on the first attempt. Frustrating, but not the first time something in that apartment hadn't gone right on try one. I redid it that same day, made sure I had enough extra block to spare, and let it cure properly this time. The next 2 days were, honestly, the worst of my life up to that point. And I mean that with a completely straight face, considering what came after. Monday morning, I stepped out onto the balcony, and there it was again. A hole. Same spot. Nothing funny about it this time. I had absolutely no explanation for what could be causing it. I'd genuinely never seen anything like this in my life. That evening, after work, I spent another few hours rebuilding it a third time, and while I waited for the mortar to set, I did something I probably should have done from the start. I set up a tripod on the balcony with a trail camera on it, night mode on, motion-triggered capture. If something, or someone, was doing this, I was going to catch it on film. That night, lying in bed, the dread wouldn't leave me alone. I kept thinking I could hear that same wet, awful sound again. Except this time, it felt like it was coming from directly below me, from Grandma Ann's unit, 2 floors down. The whole situation sat wrong in my stomach. Every instinct I had was screaming that something about this was not normal. There's a particular kind of fear that doesn't come from anything you can point to. Not the fear of a car crash, or a break-in, or a guy with a knife. That's rational fear. It has a shape. This was the other kind. The kind where you're afraid to close your eyes because of what you might see when you open them again. I dreamed that night, and it stayed with me in more detail than any dream has any business staying. I was walking down a street I didn't recognize, at night, deep snow underfoot, snow still falling. Every window in every house around me was dark, just a pair of streetlights, far apart, throwing down small, useless islands of light. I felt watched, like I was the only living thing for miles, and something else knew exactly where I was. The cold kept getting worse. The drifts kept getting deeper. The wind picked up until I could barely breathe, and I ducked into the first building I found for shelter. The entryway was pitch black, garbage on the floor. Where the elevator doors should have been, there was just an open black shaft. I climbed the stairs instead, and behind me, with every step, the stairs I'd just climbed crumbled away, cutting off any way back down. Ahead of me, a light appeared in one of the doorways. Something was pulling me toward it. My heart was slamming in my chest. I was scared enough that I started crying, and I kept walking anyway. Inside, the apartment was a nightmare in the literal sense. A metal frame wrapped in something that looked like raw flesh on every side, blood dripping steadily from the ceiling. Something pulled me toward the darkest corner of the room. There was something there. Small, wrong. I couldn't get my eyes to focus on it no matter how hard I tried. And then everything just stopped. A ringing started in my ears, and it felt, for one long moment, like my own heart had stopped beating along with it. I saw myself, lying in my own bed, from the outside, like I was watching through the wall. Something was crawling toward my own body along the floor, something wet and awful that looked like it was made entirely out of intestines, dragging itself forward with a wet, grinding, bubbling sound. The second it got close enough to touch me, I woke up. I don't think I need to explain what well-rested did not mean the next morning. I avoided my own reflection on purpose, brushed my teeth longer than I needed to, made coffee slower than I needed to. Every excuse I could invent to put off going near that balcony. Some instinct in the back of my skull kept telling me very clearly, "Don't. There's nothing good waiting for you out there." I went anyway. The hole was there. Bigger this time. I called in sick to work that day, not entirely a lie, poured myself a strong coffee, and pulled the memory card from the camera. Overnight, it had triggered 18 times. Up until 4 in the morning, nothing unusual at all. The first real shot came at roughly 4:15. Nothing out of place in it either, at first glance. Then, frame by frame, something started happening. Block by block, brick by brick, the cinder block started sliding out of the wall and vanishing into the dark opening behind it. You could see the faint shift, the wobble, right before something yanked it through. By the 18th photo, taken at almost exactly 5 in the morning, every single block was gone. That last photo, I'm not going to pretend I handled it well. Calling it the single worst moment of my life so far wouldn't be an exaggeration. I stared at that screen for a long time, and with every second, the urge to just walk out of that apartment and never come back got stronger and stronger. Eventually, I talked myself down. Camera glitch, I decided. Weird shadows, a trick of the low light. I told myself I'd fix the wall one more time, and if the hole came back after that, I'd finally just move out and stop torturing myself over it. I gathered myself, drove out to a construction site on the edge of town, and traded a case of beer with one of the guys working there for a couple dozen cinder blocks and a lift home for the whole load. This time, I didn't hold back on the mortar. And this time, I didn't set the camera up again. If it started happening again, I told myself, I'd rather just grab my things and leave than sit through another night of watching it happen frame by frame. The next morning, the wall was exactly how I'd left it. Relief doesn't begin to cover it. I actually felt a little embarrassed with myself, scared off by nothing, ready to pack up and abandon my own apartment over what was probably nothing at all. I went to work that day in a genuinely good mood. No hole. Not the next day either. After that, I finished the rest of the balcony work with a clear conscience, and the whole ordeal started to feel like some dumb story I'd tell people at a party. Except the good mood didn't last. From that point on, every single night, I stopped sleeping properly. Not just badly, like I wasn't sleeping at all, no matter how many hours I spent in bed. My head pounded constantly. My joints and my back ached like I'd aged 20 years in a month. Dark circles, bloodshot eyes, every morning worse than the last. At work I couldn't function, tripping over my own feet, my eyes shutting on their own mid-sentence. I knew, in a very calm, clinical way, that this couldn't go on much longer. Either I was doing serious damage to myself, or I was about to lose my job, because I genuinely couldn't get anything done anymore. The doctors had no answers. They ran tests, shrugged, prescribed sleeping pills and something for anxiety, muttered about stress and nervous exhaustion, and signed off on a few days of medical leave. I spent that time in bed and never once felt rested. No matter how long I slept, it never counted for anything. The exhaustion just sat on top of everything, permanent, and it was slowly driving me up the wall. Every single night, that same wet, awful sound came back, and every night it felt closer than the night before, like something was breathing directly against my ear. That same slick, choking, bubbling noise. Honestly, by that point, I'd started to genuinely wonder if I was losing my mind. Trying to fill the empty hours and keep my brain occupied with something other than the sound, I started digging into whatever I could find about the unit next door. I couldn't have told you exactly why. Some part of me just knew, on a gut level, that everything traced back to that apartment. There wasn't much to find. Barely anything, honestly, and none of it in any obvious place. What I did manage to dig up came from the archive of the local paper. The young couple who'd lived there really had spent close to 10 years trying for a baby before it finally happened. And then, roughly a month after the birth, the child disappeared straight out of its crib. 2 short articles, nothing more. The investigation went nowhere. No leads, no arrests. The baby never found. Not a week later, not a month later. The family left town not long after, and, according to the paper, we settled somewhere out past Cochrane. And that was where the trail ended completely. Meanwhile, I kept getting worse. One night, my chest started tightening up like something was sitting on it. My fever spiked past 39 degrees. I was sweating enough to soak straight through the sheets under me. My heart was hammering so hard, I genuinely thought it might give out. And that finally scared me enough to call an ambulance. That night, on a hospital bed with an IV in my arm, I slept properly for the first time in longer than I could remember. The next night, too. By the 3rd day, lying there under fluorescent lights, I think some part of me finally understood what was actually happening. When I got back to the apartment after being discharged, I found the entire wall on the balcony completely dismantled, every block gone. That scared me, genuinely scared me. But at that point, I still wasn't ready to just walk away from the place. So I changed my approach. I moved the camera into my own bedroom instead, aimed at the shared wall with the empty unit. Same night mode, same motion trigger. And that night, I didn't stay to test it. I packed an overnight bag and checked into a motel on the highway outside town instead. I slept fine, The next morning, I went back to the apartment and pulled the footage. Only 4 photos this time. In the first one, the wall had started rippling, like it wasn't drywall and plaster anymore, like it had turned to water. In the second, the ripples were stronger, and the room around it had gone visibly darker. In the third, something ugly was starting to emerge out of those ripples. And the fourth, I'm not going to describe the fourth one. You understand. After that, I didn't bother finishing the packing properly. I grabbed my laptop, my documents, a few days' worth of clothes, and whatever else happened to be within arm's reach, and I left. That was the last time I set foot in that apartment. It's been a while since then. I lost a serious amount of time and money selling that place, and no, I'm not upset about it. Not even a little. I'll go further than that. I moved to a different city entirely, found a new job, ate the financial hit on the sale without a second thought. Because none of that matters next to what I actually got out of it. Except here's the part that scares me the most. I'm living roughly 1,000 kilometers from that apartment now, in a city where nobody's ever heard of any of this. And some nights, not every night, but enough, I start hearing that same sound again. Very faint, like it's drifting up from the street outside, not from inside the building at all. It's not loud enough to convince me I'm imagining it, and it's not quiet enough to let me forget it either. Every night, I still sleep with the door locked, even though I don't really believe that helps. I still drink before bed. If there's no outrunning it, then what other option do I actually have left? I've gotten jumpier. I barely sleep. Last night, that sound was closer than it's been in months. I don't know what conclusions you're going to draw from any of this. I know there are more questions here than answers, believe me, I know. But if you know what this is, or you know anything at all about how to fight it, please, say something. Because I don't know how much longer I can keep living like this.